From the United States Capitol's Congressional Auditorium in Washington, D.C., the Government Blockchain Association presents The Future of Money, Governance, and the Law.
But I'm Bryant Nielson. I am a board of director for the Government Blockchain Association. Prior to taking on a role of the board of director, I ran the training and education work group for 2 years. Anyway, gentlemen, if you'd introduce each of yourselves.
Hello everyone, this is Shiv Aggarwal. I'm a technology entrepreneur and my main mission is to basically use technology to improve human lives. I am leading GBA in Europe. We have more than 16, 17 chapters in Europe and we are doing tremendous work there. And then I also have my own startup, which is My Earth ID. It's about solving the problem of identity, I think, which is core to everything that we do as humans.
Good afternoon, I'm Rob Stewart. I'm the president and CEO of a company called Federal Government Experts. We are a HubZone, service-able veteran-owned 8A company located here in Northern Virginia. Prior to starting a company, about 20 years of military and civilian service contracting experience in technology. Our company specializes in using process automation and blockchain to try to help level set the actual procurement workforce and streamline technology into the defense industrial base.
I'm Thomas Cox. I started my career in technology at Oracle Corporation. I also worked at a little place called IBM. I did a lot of enterprise software work and was very honored to be employee number 3 at Block One LLC, working with Dan Larimer on the EOS-IO software. And after that successfully launched, I transitioned to a new company called StrongBlock, which is automating the complexity of blockchain, so you can, in less time than it takes you to get a latte, get a blockchain up, manage it from a console, much like AWS, add nodes, invite people. That's the vision, is to take away all the complexity so enterprises will focus on the application and not the infrastructure.
Okay, so what I've done for this particular panel is I've created a set of questions that I'll ask them individually. And what I'm asking for each of them to do is to give their perspective of what the future of blockchain technology is going to be. But the biggest question that we face often is to understand where we are today. So I've also often taught classes where I speak about blockchain technology as generational. And the argument that I make often is that Bitcoin was really generation 1. And we started to get into some generation 2 blockchain technologies, Ethereum, Hyperledger. Again, this is my own definition. I'm not speaking for anyone. And then we've gotten to a level 3 and level 4, and I think that we're at the point that we're at a generation 4 blockchains. But that leads me to my set of questions that I'm going to ask my panelists. So, Tom, you actually selected this one first, and that is what do you feel is the maturity level of the technology at this moment?
Right. So when you look at technological maturity, my go-to is the Wardley map and the work of Simon Wardley. He says that you can tell how mature any industry is by the literature. What are people writing about in the press? And if they're writing about how there's this new thing called a radio, and here's how you can get your own radio tube and build your own radio, you know it's immature. And if people are starting to talk about, hey, wow, like we've all got radios, is there anything to listen to? Yeah, we all have blockchains. What's happening on blockchains? Can we put any applications on blockchains? Then you know you're like one step up from experimental, but you're still at the hobbyist phase. You know you're fully mature when no one even talks about it unless it breaks. You know, electricity generation, anybody read any stories about when the electricity goes out, that's when you get articles about electricity because it's a utility, it's a provision. Amazon Web Services is getting us to that with compute. Blockchain is nowhere near mature enough to start to build sophisticated applications on that you don't know there's a blockchain there. But we're moving there very, very rapidly. So we're on the cusp of exploring stuff that's so easy to use for systems integrators that at some level there's folks building applications and they don't know there's a blockchain there because the infrastructure folks took care of it, right? The DevOps people just made sure it's running, it's fine, don't worry about it. And I'd say we are anywhere from, well, StrongBlock's got a release coming up at the end of next month, but you'll see it more broadly with other technologies. By the end of 2020, you're going to start to see at least some people providing you with utility-level blockchain service, and developers won't even know or care that it's there. Full penetration is going to take probably 5 years. So I'd say that's where we are.
All right. So, Robert, what new innovations are on the horizon from your perspective? Pull the mic towards yourself.
Blockchain is kind of how Tom put it, since it's so much in its infancy, or there's a lot of known and unknowns that are there. From my perspective, and looking across from a federal and also government application, I would say that the possibilities are limitless. We think of everything from being able to utilize your smartphone to order food, to being able to go and have directional assistance, albeit sometimes off. It can be as simple as that, or as complex as streamlining the federal acquisition system, which everyone loves to deal with, right? So, and from my perspective, I think that the application and utility of blockchain is pretty much open-ended. I think that you can utilize it for its overall intention, which is having an immutable ledger and being able to have auditability and traceability. But I also think there's a second and third order effect that we have yet to really realize. And the government space right now, I'm a part of a procurement innovation lab where they want to utilize current systems that are siloed, and they had no idea that they can use blockchain to automate these processes and be able to look into data that have been shelved since the 1980s. This was a concept that kind of came as a spinoff in a hallway, right? Saying, hey, do you guys know about blockchain? No, I don't. Do you know we can take a look at that data and be able to aggregate it and run analysis on it? No, what's this thing called blockchain? So it's just becoming smart on it, and being able to want to fail fast and fail often. I think the application of it is pretty much open-ended and limitless at this point.
So my third question, again, is for Shiv, and this one is the blockchain technology, is it ready for prime time?
That's a very good question, actually, and I think what we have seen is that with other technologies also, that there's no definition of when a particular technology is ready for the market or not, right? It's always an evolutionary game where you have something as a concept, and then you still have some applications where you can use that technology to solve certain challenges. And with time, with experiment, and with more experience, you evolve those applications, right? And that is also happening with the blockchain as a technology and as an industry, right? So we are, as everybody agrees, that we are in the nascent stage, but still we are solving some of the problems with respect to supply chain, with respect to healthcare, with respect to identity. And obviously what would happen is, like with the feedback cycle, this is going to improve, and then we would have further generations of the technology as well as the solutions that we have. But we cannot stop now, because it's like when Ford launched the T model, right? It solved a purpose, but it was not as good as maybe Tesla now. But it's a journey, right?
It's close.
And I think yeah.
Close.
So that's a journey, yeah.
So, Robert, coming back to you, is there a tipping point when blockchain adoption is actually going to become so mainstream that, as Thomas said, it becomes a utility?
I think there is. I think the example I'll use is now when you guys look at your debit cards and credit cards, you have a SIM card on your debit and credit cards, right? There was a transitional period that said, if we added SIM technology, it added additional security. There were a lot of banking institutions, credit unions, so forth, that were very resistant to that because of the cost associated with that. And then when they started looking at the security aspect and said, hey, there's an additional cost that's unseen here of us not doing this, that overrided and said, this is a capital investment. I think that's the same thing that we have to think about in blockchain, right? Right now, there's a lot of known unknowns, again, going back to that people don't know about, and there is a capital investment. At how much, to what magnitude, what size and scope, that's very undeterministic. But the question that we have to ask ourselves in adaptation is, can we afford not to do it, right? And I think it's just an iterative type of approach where there's some things that we're going to have to maintain what we have today, and some things that we're going to have to gravitate to and move into the blockchain community slowly but steadily in order to do it right.
I'm going to actually come up with a follow-up question on this. So what are the institutional barriers to this adoption?
Education and training. I think that there's a lot of people that love to throw the word blockchain automation, AI out there, but quite honestly, there are very few people, me being one of them, that really know, the depths of blockchain. So I think it's an education. I think it's also the utility. People are unknown of, they're kind of scared because they really don't know what it can do for them because they're not educated on what it is. So going back to the education, being able to know exactly what it is, what utility it can provide to them is really going to overcome those barriers. But for me right now, as a small company, I just, I don't have people to sit on hand and develop blockchain technology. I can't just pay people overhead for things that there's not a requirement yet. And until people become smart and understand what it is, I think that's a barrier of entry, is not knowing exactly what it can do for you and being properly educated on it.
Tom?
I'll add one more barrier, and that's, or maybe two. One's governance. When you start up a blockchain, for it to be any good, it's got to be a shared source of truth. Well, shared with whom? And wait a second, no one's in charge, which means we have like endless homeowners association meetings around this chain. It's like the endless HOA meeting. And people are prepared for that. And if you're not prepared for it, it's going to take you by surprise. A guy named Steve Rogers, he's the head of IBM blockchain for supply chain. I met him in Atlanta just last spring. He said that the number one thing that he's seeing that prevents a proof of concept chain from going into production, governance issues. People are just not prepared for that. And that's why, by the way, StrongBlock's putting a big emphasis in providing governance hooks in our roadmap for, how do you make it governable? How do you make it easy for folks to realize, oh, I have to partner with people? And that brings me to objection number two. When you start creating a shared source of truth, how many of you have worked in an organization where the thing that kept you psychologically safe was the fact that your boss didn't know very much? And the thing with dysfunctional bosses is it's possible to keep them in the dark and limit their damage. And when you got a shared source of truth, there's no hiding. And if you're going to bring that into my workplace and it's not a psychologically safe workplace, I promise you everyone there will sabotage that project, because that's the last thing they want is to give their boss clear visibility into what they're doing and get beaten up on a regular basis. So a lot of progress needs to be made in terms of human understanding and kindness and a kinder, gentler workplace. The best workplaces are already that way. Blockchain is going to make it impossible for the dysfunctional organizations to adopt the technology because people are afraid of it, which means those companies will go out of business faster, and the good companies will have to hire their employees. So I think we're going to see a significant increase in civility, kindness, forgiveness, problem solving around mistakes instead of blame around mistakes, because you can't hide those mistakes when you've got a shared source of truth. But between here and there, there's going to be a lot of learning and a lot of resistance.
So I actually have a follow-up question to actually your comments there, Tom. So what remains, you identified governance as one of the things that remains to be solved. Is there anything else that you need to solve prior to greater adoption?
Oh, all kinds of stuff. A user interface, key management. I mean, can you imagine going to somebody and saying, hey, we're going to put in blockchain, but by the way, if you lose your key, the system breaks. It's like, come on. And we got departments in large companies that are replacing keys on a daily basis. We lost my smart card, I lost my this, I lost my password. But you're going to bring me a fundamental foundational system, and if someone loses their key, we lose our millions of dollars. No one's going to implement that. So we need better key management, better user interfaces. Try running MetaMask and tell me that we've got a mature user interface in this industry. It's horrific. So, yeah, we've got a whole raft of work to be done to make this the seamless, invisible, flawless, wonderful utility technology it can and should be.
So, Shiv, the question I have for you is what are the most important data or data sets that need to be included in a blockchain solution?
So I think as we are realizing that data is the most important asset or the most crucial asset across the industries, across the globe, right? So it becomes very, very important for us to basically secure that. And I think when we talk about the different data sets, I think identity becomes one of the key element, because I think that is what plays a crucial role in everything we do on a daily basis, right? So identity is one thing, and a problem as well as a data which needs to be basically secured using the blockchain technology. And then when we look at the human interactions with respect to the different industries, we can talk about healthcare data, we can talk about education data, because see, I think what is happening is like as of now, these data elements are sitting in silos across different industries or across different regions. And I think what makes it difficult is like how you are not able to basically optimally use the information or the data that we already have sitting across different databases, right? So that is where blockchain as a solution or as a platform, I think it would be great to see how we can connect all these data sets across different industries, how we can connect them so they become more useful, and then on basis of that we can do a lot of predictive analysis, and we can do a lot of we can provide better services to the citizens and human beings, and even with respect to what you call objects or this thing. So this, I think it would change how we communicate if we can secure different data elements. And it's not just one, there are so many that we can talk about.
Well, is there a primary data set that needs to be solved first? I mean, what is the order of that needs to be included?
So in my head, and I think this is the problem which is closest to my heart, which is identity, right? Because I think unless you solve the problem of identity, you are not able to basically establish the trust that we are talking about in this industry, right? So once you solve that problem, then I think we can talk about the data associated with different identities as humans, as objects, right? And this is where I think identifying individuals or objects which are generating that data would basically help us make that data more meaningful. So I think we should start with identity.
Okay. So Tom, I'm coming back to you. You've mentioned some of the obstacles that we need to overcome: education, training, some governance, key management. I mean, these seem to be very fundamental obstacles that we have to overcome. Are there big ones that we don't know about, or that you see that are on the horizon that once we get there, they're going to be insurmountable or appear to be insurmountable?
Look, if you've ever done a home repair and you think it's going to be quick and easy, and then you open it up and you're like, oh, I need to go to Lowe's for the third time, I promise you that there's going to be stuff that pops up. You're like, oh, this should have been obvious to us, and maybe it is to some folks. I'm not going to give you the definitive catalog of all the things that we're going to bump into on the way. Some things might surprise us with how easy they are. Others may surprise us that they showed up at all. So I question the utility of coming up with the one true definitive list of future obstacles. Rather, I think what we need to do is focus on building standards where standards are appropriate, ending the tribalism that we see in corners of our industry still, and working on the fundamental shared problems that all blockchains have to solve in order to actually be meaningful or useful to humanity. And that is ease of use, usability, key management, and, well, data privacy and data security.
Robert, you said you wanted to...
One big follow-up is going to be cultural change. At the end of the day, the inefficiencies, especially, once again, speaking from a federal perspective, is a jobs program. You're taking and you're providing visibility and traceability up and down a chain of systems where, you may have 100 to 200 people employed to do one single thing. Case in point, 30-second example. If you apply to get a security clearance right now, it's all done online, right? What if I told you that there's a fax machine in Boylestown, Pennsylvania, that receives your authorization to run your credit report, and it will not move forward in the actual background screening process until someone goes to that fax machine, takes it off the fax, and then uploads it into a system? Now, I won't quote the guy who told me that, but he is a very senior person in the Defense Department, and I was blown away at that. But going back to my point, it's cultural. You're taking a very paper-based society who has, utilized a sundial and an abacus and a chalkboard for the last several hundred years, and now you want them to move at the streamline of business. I mean, that is...
Government employees, they're all nodding.
It's a concept that is going to require some training, but it's also going to require some hand-holding and some tissues. So, I mean, it's very interesting.
Yeah. One bit of advice, when you go to a workforce and say we're going to make this job easier and take less time, they immediately think layoffs. So precede that with a list of all the things you're going to have them do as soon as they free up time. And then the best people get to go start doing the cool new stuff as the time gets freed up. Okay, because as soon as it looks like, this project is how we end our jobs, that project will never move forward. Okay? So find the backlog of cool new stuff that they're all dying to do, but we can't seem to find the time. And as you begin to free up time, you start to move your best people onto those new projects. And that's where you'll get accelerated growth.
So Shiv, I have a question for you. So what new or potential applications do you see that are on the horizon? Not over the horizon where we can see, but at least on the horizon.
So I think across the world, when we see, I think blockchain is being used for supply chain, for healthcare, for identity, for financial services, right? So in that sense, I think a lot of progress is being made. I think when we talk about supply chain, it's about tracking medical equipments, expensive resources, or even consumer goods, right? So in that sense, I think that is one area which is actually impacting normal people, right? The people who are actually using these services, or they are buying stuff from different stores or even groceries. So I think that is one thing where I think this is going to go further, and it's going to impact more and more people. The second thing is about healthcare. So as of, I think before blockchain, I think healthcare is one industry where the data is actually sitting in silos. It's with GPs, it's with hospitals, it's with laboratories, and they don't work together, right? So in that sense, whenever I need to basically get some health services, I need to do a lot of redundant tests and everything. And then when I travel, that also makes it difficult. So I think that is another area where it's having a positive impact. And again, because everybody uses health services across the world, this is a major impact in that particular industry. And then I think governance and public services is another area. And in countries like India and other developing regions, I think governments are actually looking at blockchain as a solution for providing better services to the citizens. And it could be as simple as paying utility bills, right? So I think, so what we are seeing is like simple use cases which are impacting people on daily basis. I think those are the key things we should focus on as well.
Okay, so Robert, one of the questions I really have is this, because everyone seems to have an opinion, so I want yours.
Oh, God.
So everyone refers to blockchain and the low-hanging fruit that provides solutions, but one of the things that, in terms of opportunities, but the other aspect of it is the disruption, the loss of jobs. If you could at least identify where you think that the technology is going to be transformative for these industries, and what do you think these industries are going to do? What are they going to look like once this transformation has occurred?
I think similar to the Industrial Revolution, to be honest with you, these folks that are doing rote reviews and or inquiries into things that are paper-based, things that are considerable, cyclical, i.e. call centers, things that require you to do rack and stack of data migration, fat fingering and keying in these things. Those jobs, unfortunately, are going to be affected by the implementation of blockchain on an order of magnitude I don't even think anyone on this stage can really kind of fathom. And we're going to have to retool that workforce to do something. I'm not really sure what that is at this point, but those mundane tasks that we do day in and day out, we call a call center, we ask them to rack and stack data or take a spreadsheet from here and put it in this system and then give me an algorithm output of something and make sure that TPS report is on my desk by Monday morning at 9 o'clock. Those days are sunsetting very soon. So I would say disruption is going to be in the normal way that we do business. That doesn't mean that those folks are going to be laid off and don't have jobs. That just means we're going to have to find something else to motivate them to do something differently. Going back to my original statement earlier, I think it's the training aspect of blockchain implementation, meaning that not everybody can use Python. Not everybody's going to be able to use QLDB and AWS. There are going to be some people that just are going to be doing what they're doing now in a different manner. And for those folks, it's incumbent upon us to find a situation where they can be a part of the blockchain implementation and also, the land of the promised land using blockchain. But to answer your question, it's going to be a major disruption for folks that do a lot of manual processes. And I will even take it a step further. There's going to be a significant pushback in the way we do contracting. the way we have Office of Lawyers, the way we do financing and banking, even the way we do healthcare. You going in and filling out a piece of paper and writing all your privileged information down on a 8.5 by 11 and saying, I don't have any insurance, those days are going to be disrupted as well. So I think that there's going to be a huge disruption in just any day of service that we do that requires paper. And in my opinion, anything that requires paper, I think, is going to be disrupted by blockchain at some point in time in the near future.
And I think, and I think in addition to that, I think it's also about the disruption in how we are basically using the data. Because as we see now, right, so let's say Facebook, it has more than 2.5 billion people, and all the data is basically owned by the Facebook, and Facebook is monetizing that, right? So I think that is also being disrupted in the sense like who owns that data, right? And I think this is where the identity question comes again. There are more than 1 billion people on Earth who don't have any identity. There are more than 3.2 billion people who don't have any digital footprint, right? So in that sense, what would happen is like with a digital identity, when people have access to that, they would be able to basically control their own data. They would be able to own the data, and then they would be able to monetize that data. So in that sense, the control would switch from the organizations to the users, and then they can decide how their data is being used. And I think we have already seen that GDPR is a big regulation in Europe, and there are so many other regulations across the world which talk about how data should be used, how the PII data should be used, right? That is another area where we are slowly moving, but I think that is something which could be a very, very big disruption using the blockchain technology.
Tom?
Yeah, as we talk about identity, I'm convinced that most people are handling identity wrong. We're trying to build like the one true identity, and we'll just like get it like totally perfect. And identities, it's an edge protocol. It's inherently decentralized, right? There's not one identity for me. There's thousands based on all the different people who have some sense of who I am. And if I was a jerk to you, then my identity to you is that I was kind of a jerk, and and that's your truth until I change and give you a better experience of me. And I can go to 8 institutions that I have professional relationships with, and they've each got their version of me. And the one true version might be the sum of them all, but who gets to access that? And if I can't be self-sovereign. I don't control whether you find me to be a jerk. I mean, that's kind of on you. You get to say that about me, and that's your truth, and that's as true as anything I think about me. There's the story of Nasruddin. You've all heard of Nasruddin. He goes into the bank, and the bank teller says, "Can you identify yourself?" And he pulls out a pocket mirror and looks at it, and he says, "Yeah, that's me." Mm-hmm. There's some truth to that in our future, that we will own a part of our identity, but others will own their parts of their relationship to us. And if you aren't building identity systems that are federated and that are inherently kind of fractal, you're conceiving of it wrong, and you will come to pain and difficulty. I've got a curiosity about how we handle data over the long term. Hopefully we're going to see people take the W3C standard for verifiable claims and verifiable credentials and roll that out in blockchain form, please. And at some point, I'm going to have, can this person buy alcohol? And all they get back is yes or no. They don't get the person's birth date or their home address. Okay, super. But do they cache that information somewhere? Do they have to go back to the system every single time? Like, where does the yes or no live? Right? And so we're going to have cached subsets of data, these, low density answers, these zero knowledge proofs are going to be out there, and those are going to be hackable unless you're careful. They're going to have a TTL, a time to live. There's a whole theory of data caching that's going to come from single source of truth, but I'm not a node on that system. I'm just a client to it. How often do I go and ping it for the same answer, or do I get to cache a copy, and for how long am I allowed to cache it, and is it hackable? And it's going to be a glorious mess. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, and it's the right work. It's good work. It's going to be a whole lot better than what happens today. In India, someone wants to steal your land, they go in, bribe somebody, declare you dead, they inherit your and you can literally go into a court and they'll say, no, we can't talk to you, you're dead. And a guy actually created the Association of Dead People to band together all the people that had been victimized this way to lobby for reforms in India. And if you think it doesn't happen in the U.S., it may not happen at that scale, but I promise you, someone somewhere has been declared dead, and they're disputing that, and the system's fighting them. And you'd like to think I can pull out a pocket mirror and say, no, I'm me, I'm alive. And the system should have to bow to reality in that way, and often it doesn't, to the harm of the individual. And if we don't build our systems to be fundamentally about empowering and preserving individuals, we're doing it wrong.
One of the things that I want to follow up on this, and I didn't share this question with you, but I would really like you to give me a 1-minute succinct answer about what the role of blockchain will be in, say, reputation management, and how is that going to be done? You want to start, Shiv? 1 minute.
Okay. So I see, again, it boils down to, I think, identity, because I think that would drive the reputation of an individual or of a platform, right, if we talk about that as well. But I think with respect to reputation of individuals, I think it's about how much data do we have about someone's identity, or basically what they do and then how they do. I think this is where the definition of identity becomes very, very broad, right? It's not just about your name, your date of birth, or everything. It's also about what you are doing or what kind of data you are generating across different industries. And on the basis of that, so we are talking about the concept of trust score, right? So for example, with credit score in financial industry, you talk about the financial health of an individual. Similarly, trust score is about the concept of the strength of your identity. So that basically builds the credibility of an individual with respect to how frequently they are using their digital identity across different industries, and the kind of data they are generating, and then the kind of feedback they are receiving. So I think it's all about the communication and rating that communication.
Robert?
I think looking at reputation management, it's going to cut down of, give me your ID. Let me make sure you're 21 to buy alcohol, or you were speeding over here, so give me your ID to be able to give you a ticket. I think you get a lot of people, especially psychopaths out there, that lie and say, I got this degree from such and such, and I've done this in my life, and all this kind of crap, right? So having the kind of the zero trust mentality and being able to put that on blockchain, you can independently verify immediately if that person is who they say they are, or if they mean to do you harm, right? And I don't know, there's like a homing beacon that can be over people's head, yellow for bad and green for good, I don't know. But to me, it provides that visibility to both, people who need to know, and folks that, are cautioned about trusting someone to know if they're a good actor or a bad actor, or if they mean to do you harm or intent. So, I mean, that identity management, being able to have that visibility, to me is key, and it's going to give you the thumbs up or thumbs down if you want to do business with that individual.
Tom?
Yeah, reputation management systems are always going to be gamed. On eBay, there are people who collaborate and collude to buy back and sell back and forth the same 1 penny virtual object for thousands of iterations, give each other 5 stars. And, oh, look, this person's got a really high rating, great reputation. It's a robot. He's just waiting for his chance to rip you off. But the system thinks that they're great because these other robots all gave it a robotic thumbs up. And so I promise you, the human ability to deceive other humans is a well-honed ability. We are evolved. Every organism evolves for the dominant features of its environment. Fish have fins, right? Horses have hooves. They can run fast on the plains. Humans have enormous brains, so we can outsmart each other because we are the dominant feature in our own environments. And I promise you, we are going to be in an arms race around reputation, because the people who want to rip you off have every financial incentive in the world to find ways to game whatever the system is, and we're going to have to be cautious and careful, and we have to empower individuals to say, well, yeah, somebody I've never met might say, 5 stars, or thousands of robots might say 5 stars, but nobody I know has actually traded with this person, and so I'm just going to discount it. And we're going to have, communities of trust. We're going to have, Dunbar's number is going to become increasingly important. That's, right, everybody knows Dunbar's number, yeah. That you basically can maintain in your head, in your active working memory, 150 relationships in your life. Your close friends, your far friends, a few people you stay in touch with from school, the people you work with, and some of your neighbors. And anything beyond that 150, they're barely acquaintances. Social media has done nothing to move the needle on this because it can't, because it's got to be, you got to look at them and know, do I trust this person based on the history of my interactions with them? And we can encode that online, but we're not going to be able to extend it. And so we're going to have to come to grips with the limitations of technology to save us from this aspect. And we're going to have to empower individuals to park on blockchains their true mutual beliefs about each other. And I mentioned earlier, we're going to have to be kinder to one another, a little more forgiving. Reputation's going to have to decay a little bit over time, because honestly, if you judge me about what I was like 20 years ago, I would be sad.
Well,
I need
thank you.
the incentive to grow personally, and I know that like maybe I can make a new impression on people and be forgiven for my past ways of being. And we want all folks to have that grace to grow and improve and change as humans. So the reputation system should empower us, not imprison us, and it also shouldn't be used to weaponize against us. And that's going to be the ongoing struggle for reputation systems.
Thank you very much. This is the end of this panel. Thank you, panelists, for joining me on this panel. Thank you very much.